Just waiting for. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Helm developer call. Um, Thursday, May the 7th, 2026. Please note the call falls under the CNCF Code of Conduct, so please be respectful and polite. And let me get us started. So, on the agenda today, we don't have any announcements listed, but I think we should be announcing that we're going to cut the next minor release on Monday. Is it?
Yes. Or sorry, next on Wednesday.
Wednesday. Okay. Minor
Yeah.
release on Wednesday. So let me put this on the agenda.
Oh, right. We should probably note that the RCs are available for download in um that the RCs are already available for download, and I'll paste the commands here just to do so. Um oh yeah, actually I do have one note about this. First of all, I was planning to cut the release and um I was very backed up. And I was just like, could someone help? George did help, and thank you. I just noticed though that we didn't publish they are published and they're up, but we didn't make the GitHub releases for them.
Did
That's
we check?
not in
Okay.
the actual GitHub release artifact. That's not really a big deal, but I just thought I would note that, and so we could make those if we want
Okay,
to.
I can do that. I just thought we didn't for pre-releases, but
Oh yeah, we usually do.
okay.
But again, I don't.
It
This
was my
is
first time
mainly to
coding,
let.
so I
Yeah.
probably didn't. I thought I scanned through the rest. Anyway, okay. I will create the pre-release.
Yeah,
The
I'll show an example for the future or for past examples. But
yeah.
thank you very
Um,
much, by the way, for doing that.
yeah, no, carrier releases, pre-release is actually kind of easy. So
Yeah.
and thank you, Gary. The Go release build worked well. I was wondering if we want to backport that to V3, but I guess that can be a different discussion item. Okay, let me
Oh,
moderate myself.
yeah.
Okay, discussion. So the topic of today, which is probably going to take some time, is values coalescing. So what this means is when, for everybody's context, is when you run Helm, inside of the chart are the chart's default values. And then any subcharts also have their own values. And then there's the user supplied values, and Helm takes these three sets of values and merges them or coalesces them to build the values which are the inputs to the chart and all subcharts. And there's some extras in the behavior, which are things like removing null. So if the user specifies a null, then that removes the key from the resulting values, and propagating. You can export and import values from subcharts into your parent chart. Um, and the reason to discuss this today is that this behavior has been extended and amended over time, and it never quite seems to be not buggy. And fixing the bugs is like whack-a-mole, because when someone makes a change, it breaks some other workflow which no one really knew existed. And it's been a painful ongoing thing for a few years now. So what I am proposing is that we first create a sort of a specification as to what the behavior should be, and once we all agree on the specification, it can uh, uh, be the canonical thing which we're going to code to, rather than the current situation where we create, and every time we fix something we create another bug because we don't know what is the defined behavior. So that's the intention. Floor is open. That's the the overview. If anybody wants to chime in as to what they think, I know Scott has some thoughts.
I just pasted in the notes. Okay, well, yeah, I've a bunch of thoughts that are listed as notes from last week. Just and I'll just like run through them real fast. Actually, maybe what I should do is I should put this one that I just wrote first. Okay. Yeah, so okay. So I just made a link. I just also linked the doc that we had, George, from last year. Or from, sorry, well, from the end of 2024. Yeah, it's
Yep.
like, geez. Um, okay, so yeah, it's bizarre. It has been a year and some months. Wow, it's been like almost a year and a half. That is ridiculous. Time flies. So basically, the whole problem is that uh, we we have even without the nil value, even without some of the edge cases for or detailed cases, let's just say, not even edge cases, but let's detailed case corner or edge cases or whatever, but the detailed intended functionality for the nil values key deletion um, it has never been fully spelled out when it comes to how that propagates from uh, there are some details around it that have never been fully spelled out. You know, the idea in general, um, the intention is clear. And then the use case, we intended to maintain that because it is how it has been working since it was introduced, which was that um, the initial idea is that if you if you delete a if you pass the basic idea was that if you pass a nil value to a key as a value a direct value of a key, it should delete that key. That was a convention that we added years ago because Helm users need that. And the use case that is clarified in the documentation and the Helm docs for that is just one use case in Kubernetes. It's because certain keys, they're not compatible. And so if you have a default value in a chart, which many did or do, um, and you need to say use a different storage class or some other key that's just not compatible with the default, you can't just simply add your own. You need to remove that other default. Um, yeah, and while that can be handled with a post renderer, it uh, this was the solution for doing it without having to handle those complex cases of knowing what those should be in the final rendered product. It seemed to make sense. Everybody used it for a while, but then there were some edge cases that were discovered, like, well, what happens if a parent chart or decides to basically what happens if a chart decides to use that null value concept for one of its subcharts. Um, and then what if you want to override that? So there were some of those cases, and then there were cases about what happens if you nullify a key in an object. Um, and that's the only key. Anyway, there are some cases that you see like in use cases, and none of those have been spelled out the intended behavior. So because of that, we don't really know which of those, hello, are bugs and which of those are uh, actual features
Features
that
that
we
people
need to continue to support, especially because some PRs have changed the actual uh, tests along with that. So it's like, where is the source of truth for what we're supporting? Generally, it's the tests. We make sure that the tests reflect intended behavior, and so if something breaks, we know. And if there hasn't been a test written for it, that just means we then need to define what the intended behavior is. We put that in a test, and so we know for future. Unfortunately, we've had some PRs that have gone back and forth on that, and we've never really clarified as a maintainer group what that's supposed to be for those edge cases. So that's why for the null key, that is confusing. Now, for values coalescing in general, there is a list of what the precedence is, and the problem that George and I ran into when we were first looking at this in 2024 was the tests that we have contradict the documentation that we have on what the precedence order is supposed to be. And so that Google Doc that's in there um, clarifies that. Um, Not only that, but as new features have been added to values coalescing, it has got extraordinarily complicated. Uh, the exported values, the nil key, like how that actually coalesces from charts to subcharts, and ultimately, it's relatively. I don't want to. It's not brittle, but it is. I would say it's tenuous to make major changes to the coalescing logic. Um, that said, we could have a discussion about changing what that coalescing logic should be in charts version 3. That's one of the ideas. Um, but one way or the other, I think I think what we need to do, and I'll just stop here, is finally, I think we ultimately got Matt Farina as like, I think we still are waiting on one question from him. But ultimately, we need to like make a statement of what the intended behavior is, make sure that's documented. This could be in a HIP if need be, or it could just could be in a documentation file. However we do this, it needs to be clear, and then we need to like parse out uh, the tasks and issues need to refer back. Issues and pull requests need to refer back to that. That was our suggestion, mine and George's suggestion from then, and we just haven't finished it because we basically it seemed to sort of resolve itself mostly with some fixes, and we moved on to other things. And more recently, it's come back up, and I think we're back at that stage. So that's where I kind of want to end what I have to say about that.
Andy.
I was mainly also going to say, in addition to the document that discusses what we want to have in terms of the functionality, we want to ensure that we have adequate testing for a lot of the different scenarios to ensure that we get the result that we are looking for. Because I know that, Scott and myself and a whole bunch of others went through that in 2024, yourself, George, and we thought we got most of it, but we didn't.
Yeah, tests and um, documentation so that users understand what it's meant to do. Agree. Um, cool. So that outlines the problem, and it's got alluded to it. Then there's been some recent pull requests to try and change this. I forget names. Jonas Johans, probably mispronouncing both those versions. Has been trying to do some work here, which is great. I just feel like the PRs are the wrong angle, and because it's unclear what they should be implementing. So that was the purpose of raising this. Does anybody have any other thoughts? I think the loose proposal is before we make changes to the coalescing logic, we do what Scott just said and write down the details. Um, so we can note this. Just thinking if there's any other action items that we want to undertake for this one. I don't think so. Not at this point. So yeah.
But maybe the detail is I think Andy brought up what we had discussed in the maintainer channel like several times and on in GitHub several times is focusing on the use case base. It's one thing that well, I see Farina's joined, but like that Matt has mentioned a number of times is like we're all obviously thinking about the end user and we're thinking about the use cases. What are they? They're spelled out in the tests, but not always. Often the tests are just testing a very specific actual unit of functionality. It's not actually spelling out what the use cases are. So I think we need to I basically agree with Andy. I think like in terms of process, we ought to write those down. Um, in this doc, by the way, at the end of the doc, we started to do that. We have that doc that I had linked. We have 7 of them listed. Um, it'd be nice to get reviews on those and for people to say, oh, actually, this isn't I have a different use case, or that one doesn't make sense, or literally give any feedback about those and just help us to shape them.
Yep. Matt was raised.
Yeah, I was going to say on this, probably a good place to record this as an informational HIP, where the use cases, requirements, and expected behavior can all formally be documented. An informational HIP is probably a really good place. We have a few more of those already, and at least it would give us one place to point to it. We could even have one for V2 charts, and then even talk about proposed changes for V3 charts.
Yep. That
That's it.
I think was a good outcome. So in the interest of time, let's aim to collect the details in a Google Doc or whatever form we feel appropriate. I'll link in the notes. I just got to dig it out of I just need to create a gist. I got Claude to write a specification for the code as it is because AI is good at these sorts of things. So I'll put that in the notes and then we can try and reconcile what we expect. And I didn't actually read what Claude generated yet, so I also do that before I put my name next to it. And yeah, then we can work out. I think maybe we can ping Johannes in the dev Slack and try and if he's interested in assisting here because he's been doing some work. Cool. Thanks for listening to our examination of this problem. Does anybody else have anything to discuss? If there's no other items, Andrew, ready for merge? So this is I'm trying to remember the title, and it's loading.
Got the exposing the history during template time.
That's right.
And I've got reviews on it, three of them, 3 approvals, so I think it's ready for merge. Just wanted to
Okay.
call that
from
out.
someone we don't.
Oh, yes, it actually is. We did not. What should have been done is uh, yeah, actually, never mind. No, this is ready for merge. I'll just go ahead and do it.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Wait, sorry. I'm not going to go ahead and merge. What I'm going to do is make sure that it is. Oh, you did add the number.
Andrew, if there's any.
Great. That was all I was waiting on initially yeah, we assigned the number. It needed to be added. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Shout outs. Any shout outs? Any social media amplification? Assignments for next call. I think just looking at my calendar, I think I can be here.
Yeah, shout out. Thanks, George, for stepping in for the RC.
No problems.
Oh, also shout out to Terry for there was a lot to parse in the Go releaser, like the Gox to Go releaser change. And I don't know, actually, just since you're on the call here, Matt, I don't know if you got to see in the end there, but there were, there's a lot of other changes that I know we've talked about wanting to make to the release process, but in the end, what changed only was the Gox and Go releaser artifact creation. None of the rest of the steps have changed yet. That's going to be separate. But yeah, so just thanks for doing that, Terry, because that was annoying.
Yeah.
Cool. Actually, discussion, since we have 2 minutes, do you think we should backport the Go release a change to V3 branch or just let V3 continue on Gox?
Do we have any blockers for it?
I mean, for me, is there a real value to spending time on V3 since V3 is going to die at some point?
And that point is just a few months away.
Exactly.
It could be effort based. If I can try and cherry pick the PR, and if it's easy, then there'll be a PR. If it runs into problems, then it's probably not worth it, like we say.
That is a really good point. Yeah, and yeah, It is pretty minimal though, I will say. And in the end, as it turns out, it's a fairly minimal change. Um, and it's more of a CI thing than it is like related to the version. Um, so I would just say I guess like maybe if it just like if just like the basic cherry picking port doesn't do it,
Yeah,
then
I'm
yeah,
not
like
gonna
drop
try
it because of
fight the
what you
system
said.
to make it
Yeah,
work.
but when we were testing it, when Terry and I were testing it, you can just test it locally just by running Go releaser and just check to make sure that the binaries are created in the exact same way in the exact same name format. And that's pretty much it at that point. Yeah. But maybe that's a really good question for like the rest of the release process if we wanted to make the bigger changes. Maybe just don't bother with that for V3 if it takes time.
That I would agree with. So if we introduce signing, or I don't know, yeah. Anyway, okay. Right, back on track. Assignments for next call. Moderator. I
If no one else wants to
think
do it, I don't mind. But if someone would like to, I did recently, so
I just myself for you.
okay.
Notes for next call.
I can take that.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Issue triage. We got Terry already. I'll stick my name and PR review for myself as well. Anybody else do issue triage PR review?
Yes,
All
I
right.
can review for sure.
Okay. Awesome. Right. We'll give everybody a chance to grab a coffee. Thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your day. And appreciate the discussion. Have a good one.
Wow.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.